Welcome to the press conference following this non-stop European Council. Thank you for your patience. The President of the European Council and the President of the European Commission is joined by the Chancellor of Germany. Willkommen.
Dankeschön.
Thank you for your patience once again. We have translation into 6 languages: French, English, German, Spanish, Italian and Dutch. We'll have a Q&A, but first I give the floor to the President of the European Council.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Now, this European Council was a marathon session. There were lots of difficult topics on the agenda, important issues for the future of the European Union, and I have to say that after several hours of very intense discussion, we have taken a big step forward for the European Union in various areas. Now, if you remember, a year ago exactly, in December of last year, we met here in Brussels and we were talking about climate neutrality with a view to 2050 for the EU. And that would mean that we would be taking leadership in the climate transition, which is so important to Europe and to the rest of the world. Now, in December last year, who could have thought that at the start of 2020 we would have been confronted with this terrible shock, COVID-19? It was difficult. It was very demanding. The various institutions of the European Union had to get together with the member states, and no one could have imagined that a year later we'd be in this situation. Less than a year later, we'd be here discussing the development of vaccines, unprecedented mobilization of vaccines to protect Europeans and the rest of the world. So the first thing I would like to say here is that we have had the capacity to reach an agreement, to get together in order to implement the multi-annual financial framework and the recovery fund we established or talked about in July. I would like to pay tribute to Chancellor Angela Merkel on this topic in particular, because she really rolled up her sleeves. She got down to work with a great deal of commitment to do this for Europe. And thanks to all the preparations before the Council and in the course of this meeting, we have been able to come up with this nice surprise, this big step forward. And that means that as the EU, we have the financial capacity to do this. We have the budget, but we have this recovery fund as well now, so that we can face the digital transition, the green transition. We can support SMEs, we can support our citizens and families as well, because COVID has been a big shock and we need to work together cohesively. We need to invest, we need to reform together, we need to meet the same targets together. And in that way, governance issues, rule of law issues, issues which the Parliament has been very interested in, can be taken into account as well, because this is at the very heart of our whole project in Europe. Now, we have reached an agreement on how we should move forward on COVID-19 vaccines, mutual recognition of tests, and we feel that the next crucial stage here will be our ability to manage the distribution of these vaccines together throughout Europe and elsewhere in the world, so that people can have fair and equitable access. Now, on the climate issue, well, let's just say that quite a lot of last night was spent discussing this. It wasn't easy. No, not at all easy, actually, because the Commission was very ambitious. They wanted to increase our ambitions, a reduction of 55% by 2030, which means that our 2050 commitment is credible. It means that we in Europe would have a leadership role to play. And very soon we will be celebrating the 5th anniversary of this commitment made in Paris, the Paris Agreements. And we have been firmly committed as an EU, as a European Union from the very outset. This is a very positive battle in the field of climate diplomacy to bring in other parts of the world, to get them to jump on the bandwagon and come up with common standards and share our ambitions. We have been able to define a number of points of principle to help us achieve these objectives. The European Union, with the Member States, define how we're going to work together, along with the European Commission, which has a key role here in submitting specific proposals so that we are able to actually implement the commitments we have made. And we're very pleased that in the UN we will be able to express our confidence and our unity in Europe on our climate ambitions. And there are other issues, international issues, relationship between Europe and the US following the recent US elections. And we want to be able to identify certain topics so that we can redevelop an ambitious alliance with a country which is a friend and an ally and with whom we share some very strong and solid values. And we would like to further develop our partnership with them in various sectors in the future. And we want to stress the importance of multilateral cooperation on the international agenda, because this is something which is at the very core of the EU. Now, relations with our eastern partners, Turkey, that's a difficult situation, of course, and we know that there's a key issue here when it comes to defending our geopolitical interests in the medium and long term. But in the short term, of course, we have to adopt certain guidelines, and that's what we've done, picking up on the decisions reached in October. We had two options proposed in October, a positive option, a more restrictive one. We've evaluated the situation, and you see what our conclusions are and the decision taken. And we were also able to confirm the preparatory work which are being carried out diplomatically in the field in terms of security and combating terrorism. We didn't need to discuss these issues at great length because we did spend a lot of time on the other points, as you can well imagine. And we had the southern neighbourhood discussion as well this morning. Christine Lagarde came to us, and we had a very important exchange of views in the context of the Eurozone summit. And we talked about how we can work together to promote economic recovery above and beyond the budgetary side of things. That's been validated now, of course, but the idea is how can we continue to encourage finance ministers so that we can continue to make progress in the field of banking union and capital markets union as well. Now, there are a couple of points. I'm not going to go on at any great length here, but I would just like to say that I am very firmly convinced that our meeting has been very important because we're coming to the end of 2020. It's been an extraordinary year in the strictest sense of the word because everything has changed and shifted, and it means that we've had to call into question all sorts of things that we knew from before. And this council has been an opportunity to show that we work together in a calm and confident fashion. And this is how we want to ensure the EU can get onto track again. We are talking about difficult issues, sensitive issues. This did require a great deal of effort. I would like to thank the heads of state and government and their teams for all the work done and all the support we've had from the European Commission as well. They have fed into our work and have helped the German presidency in their leadership role. The past 6 months I have very much enjoyed working practically on a daily basis, certainly on a weekly basis with Angela Merkel. And centimetre by centimetre, we've been able to take things forward in the decisions which need to be taken.
Frau Bundeskanzlerin.
Oh ja, ich möchte mich auch.
Well, I would like to start off by thanking Charles Michel, with whom I have been working very, very intensively, very regularly, and Ursula von der Leyen. I think we've been a good team to overcome the challenges which were on the agenda during the German presidency. And I would also like to thank our teams, the Secretariat General of the Commission as well. And I would also like to thank the ambassadors. This is perhaps not customary, but the ambassadors had many co-repairs, and our German ambassadors are, I think, the only ones, apart from the council presidents and the commission members, who are still in Brussels, are still physically in Brussels, most of the other work having had to be done by teleconference. We saved up a lot of work for this last council, and it is a great relief that, thanks to this joint effort, we have managed to pass the budget on, pass it back to the Parliament, including the recovery fund and the conditionality mechanism as well. It's been a huge task because, I mean, the second wave of the virus is... we're in the thick of it at the moment, and we needed to cooperate. There was a long history to this. There was a Franco-German proposal. There were many discussions in July. In July, we had one of the longest councils in July, in fact, in the history of European councils. And 46 years ago, by the way, the European Council was invented by a great European, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, as Charles Michel pointed out to us yesterday. So we now have to work on the own resources decisions and get them transposed in national parliaments so that the financing can be made operational as soon as possible. We will need money. We will need to invest in the future. So it was fitting that the second biggest issue today was our obligations in the climate area, because the Green Deal is a core project. We don't just want to produce an economic program, but we need something that will take us safely into the future. And the Commission has told us that that we will soon have to present our national programs, and we should be able to give a commitment of 55% reduction by 2030. We've managed to do that. We've managed to come up with that commitment the day before the United Nations meeting. I don't know what would have happened if we had been unable to reach such a result. Now, we wanted, as part of the German presidency, to make relations with Turkey more constructive. Unfortunately, a number of developments have taken place in the southeastern Mediterranean, where, unfortunately, we have to say that we have to do more listings due to what we consider to be the illegal drilling going on there. Nonetheless, we're still reaching out to Turkey. We want a constructive agenda with Turkey, but from the perspective of the German presidency, this has been rather disappointing. We had intended to achieve more. I can be quite open about that. We have left a bit of unfinished business for our Portuguese successor, and I wish Antonio all the best with that. I must say I rather enjoyed the Council presidency, even though we were unable to do a lot of what we'd intended to do. We had wanted to invite heads of state and government to Germany for a EU-China summit. We weren't able to do that, but it doesn't mean we were idle, because Corona created a lot of extra work for us. And finally, I would like to thank Ursula von der Leyen. She's had to contend with a very disparate group of heads of state and government. There was some confusion at the beginning, different ways of reacting to the virus. But now the coordination has improved. It bears the Commission's stamp. And the coordination for the vaccines, for example, is a good example of that. And after these 6 months, I'm convinced of the need to work on a European health union to set an example for other important issues. Thank you.
Madam President.
Ja, vielen Dank. Zunächst einmal, liebe.
Thank you. First of all, dear Angela, what a presidency you've had. We're all rather exhausted after the night we've spent negotiating, but I think we're quite entitled to be pleased with the results. We've got the budget, the EU Next Generation, and the climate is quite an impressive triple And so this is a good day for Europe.
By saying that I'm very grateful to the German presidency and to Angela Merkel for the efforts undertaken since this summer, from the Commission's proposal on the budget and the Next Generation EU to the agreement in July in Council and the finalisation in the next days. This has underlined, indeed, Europe's ability to come together and the capacity to act in the face of the worst crisis the EU has ever faced. It would not have been possible without the steady leadership of the Chancellor, the rotating presidency, and we are very grateful for that. The agreement will help us provide a strong economic response to the crisis while preserving the rule of law. Citizens and the EU economy need our support more than ever, and they need it now. So we need to finalise the adoption of the package with the help of the European Parliament as soon as possible. And Member States also have to ensure a swift ratification. This is essential for us to power our economy as soon as possible. Of course, the launch of Next Generation EU is also a key component of our climate ambition. Now that we have secured the funding, we have the means for our actions. And that is why I'm delighted that, together with the German presidency, we were able today to reach an agreement on the proposal for a new EU climate target. We will reduce emissions by at least 55% by 2030. And today's agreement puts us on a clear path towards climate neutrality in 2050. It gives certainty to investors, to businesses, to public authorities and to citizens. It future-proofs our union. All EU countries should benefit from the transition with economic growth, a cleaner environment and healthier citizens. The European Green Deal will be our growth strategy. On the coronavirus pandemic, right now the European Union is working full speed to review the safety of vaccines and make them available. We aim to authorize the BioNTech-Pfizer vaccine by the end of the year, subject to EMA's opinion. EMA's opinion on the Moderna vaccine should become before mid-January, and a rolling review of data for AstraZeneca, Oxford and Johnson & Johnson vaccines is ongoing. But it's vaccination and not vaccines that saves lives. I called on all the member states to finalise their preparations for the start of vaccination. We stand ready to support. We also care for our neighbourhood. The European Union will coordinate the donation of vaccines by member states, in particular to protect the healthcare workers in the Western Balkans and in our neighbourhood. And finally, we should indeed start working now on avoiding future crises. I asked leaders for their support to advance rapidly on getting the European Health Union off the ground, and thank you very much, Angela, for your words concerning that. Finally, I briefed the leaders on the negotiations with the United Kingdom. Positions remain apart on fundamental issues. On the level playing field, we have repeatedly made clear to our UK partners that the principle of fair competition is a precondition to privileged access to the EU market. It is the largest single market in the world, and it is only fair that competitors to our own enterprises face the same conditions on our own market. But this is not to say that we would require the UK to follow us every time we decide to raise our level of ambition, for example, in the environmental field. They would remain free, sovereign, if you wish, to decide what they want to do. We would simply adapt the conditions for access to our market accordingly the decision of the United Kingdom, and this would apply vice versa. On fisheries, here also we continue to have a gap. We have not yet found the solutions to bridge our differences. We understand that the UK aspires to control its waters, The UK must, on the other hand, understand the legitimate expectations of EU fishing fleets built on decades and sometimes centuries of access. On these and other points, our negotiators are working. We will decide on Sunday whether we have the conditions for an agreement or not. In the meantime, the Commission has proposed 4 targeted contingency measures today. They provide a short-term fix to ensure basic connectivity in air and road transport for 6 months. And we are also proposing to the UK to ensure reciprocal access to each other's waters for next year. One way or the other, in less than 3 weeks, it will be new beginnings for old friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. We'll now take a couple of questions. May I kindly ask you to switch on your cameras? In the meantime, I can tell you that on our Council website, we have published all conclusions on every different topic. And we're going to start with Thomas Gutschker from Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Thomas.
Yes, thanks a lot, and good morning to all of you. My questions are on Turkey. The first question will be to President Michel. You have added in the conclusions a sentence saying that EU intends to cooperate on the responsible management of migration flows and now towards all member states. That sounds almost like a veiled acceptance of Hungary and Poland to take in migrants, which they have refused so far. Could you please clarify what this really means? Und eine Frage an Frau.
And a question to the Chancellor. What additional measures are you considering to cause Turkey to change its behaviour? In particular, for some time, Greece has been asking Germany not to deliver 6 submarines to Turkey. Is it possible that the federal government may withdraw that authorization that has provisionally been given for the submarines to be delivered?
Just one word about your first question. No, your assessment is not right. The idea is that we are ready to cooperate with Turkey. What we are doing, and we are ready to cooperate more with Turkey in order to tackle this difficult challenge of migration. And of course, it's important for all the member states, all the European member states. It's important for them to have a good and a strong and a responsible cooperation with Turkey. This is the only interpretation of this sentence.
Ja, ich kann das nur bestätigen.
Well, I can only confirm that we weren't thinking of Hungary and Poland at all in this context, but just a common agreement between Turkey and the EU that illegal traffickers in human beings are not wanted. We want to have regular migration. That is the whole point of the EU-Turkey agreement. By the next European Council, we have called for a report to be made on all aspects of our cooperation with Turkey with a view to the region as a whole, for example, in Libya and Nagorno-Karabakh. We've asked for such a report to be made, and we will discuss our further relations with Turkey in the light of that report. We have a certain strategic dependence on each other. Many of us are NATO members, but there are certain tensions. So it is well worth discussing this issue very intensively. And in this context, we also discussed delivery of arms, of armaments. These have to be discussed in the NATO framework. We have to consult the new American administration about Turkey. So I cannot answer that. I can't yet say anything in response to that question about arms exports from the Federal Republic to Turkey. We're waiting for the report.
Question is for Marco Bressolin, La Stampa. Marco.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for the question, Barend. I have a question on COVID coordination for Chancellor Merkel. In the past day, we have seen pictures and video from UK on the first vaccinations. And since symbolism is quite important, did the leaders agree to start the vaccination on the same day across Europe? And if not, why? Are there still significant differences in the level of preparedness between member states?
Nein, wir haben sehr ausführlich über die.
Well, we discussed the approval in EMA in detail. And in the long run, the member states' contributions are relevant because the authorities of each member state are consulted by EMA. And we have agreed that we should be very prompt in replying to those consultations from the EMA. And of course, the vaccines will have to be delivered in a coordinated way so that they should arrive at the same time. Now, as to whether we can do that to a precise hour and the needle going in at exactly the same time in the same member state, I don't know if we can do it to that extent, but the aim is to have access at the same time.
Next question is for Maria Arroni, Antena TV from Greece. Maria.
Bonjour, merci, Maria Arroni de Antenne. J'ai une question.
I have a question regarding Turkey. Are you satisfied with this consensus found on Turkey? And Chancellor, if I've understood correctly, you said you were slightly disappointed regarding Turkey's behavior. Now, the message to Ankara, is that clear enough to convince them to change their provocative behavior in the Eastern Mediterranean? The Turkish president is not complying with the UN resolutions anyway. Thank you.
Ja, wir haben ja die kritischen.
Yes, we did talk about the critical points, and I'm happy with the consensus we've come up with. I think it's very balanced. On the one hand, we're saying where we feel provoked, for example, the Varosha action, that for our Cypriot colleagues is a point where they are quite right to complain, and we support them fully in that complaint. The Oris Rice has moved from Greek waters, but I hope that the messages we've sent are being received and understood.
Question is for Marcus Price from ARD. Marcus.
Thank you, Bernd. I've got two questions. If I may, I'd like to ask in German. Eine ist für die.
So I have one for the Chancellor. You've taken stock of your presidency in terms of content, but what about the atmosphere, in particular the argument about the budget? Some quite harsh words were used, references to the Gestapo and to the Soviet Union. Has that left any traces? Has that marked you? President Erdogan said that every word should be weighed in the balance as if it was gold. So have these words left their mark on you? And my other question is to the President of the Commission, Mrs. von der Leyen, about the rule of law clause. The Parliament says that there's nothing in the legal text about examination by the Court of Justice, and that from the Parliament's point of view, they can apply it as of 1st of January next year. So when will you start applying the Rule of Law Clause, Commission?
Also ich kann von meinen Gesprächen mit.
Well, from my talks with all members of the European Council, I can assure you that no such words were used. We meet each other with respect, at least as far as I'm concerned, in my talks with my colleagues. And this helped us to find a solution at the end of the process. It was indeed a very difficult issue. I was very anxious to try my utmost to get an agreement, and David Sassoli, the Parliament President, saw us yesterday and took note of the agreement and accepted it. I think that's an important point. And I think that it all goes to show that a way can always be found. As for, I think it shows that in case anyone feels wounded, we need to keep talking to each other so that we're clear about each other's circumstances. And then we had to deal with the climate as well, and it's really good to be able to build on an atmosphere of trust, even though there are huge differences of opinion, and one can't dismiss them, especially in connection with rule of law.
Prüfung.
As regards the scrutiny of the conditionality mechanism by the European Court of Justice, in the European Parliament a few weeks ago, when we had a debate for the first time about it, I said that I was convinced that the conditionality mechanism is right, but it is possible to seek the way to the Court of Justice. We have different, this is a way of clearing up different interpretations of the same legal text. As far as the timing is concerned, as of the 1st of January, provided that everything now is voted according to plan at the end of the trialogue, then as of the 1st of January, the Commission, within the framework of the conditionality mechanism, will look at the cases, and if the rule of law has been breached, that case will be taken up. We will need some time until we have the guidelines, the detailed guidelines for the conditionality mechanism. Once the Court of Justice has given its ruling, these cases will be dealt with. So from the 1st of January on, not even a single case will be lost.
Next question is for Frédéric Simon from Euractiv. Frédéric, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Understand Poland and other Eastern member states have asked for additional funding to finance the energy transition in those countries which have a bigger challenge than others in meeting the climate neutrality goal and the 2030 climate objectives. So what kind of assurances did they get from the European Council on this front?
La volonté qui est partagée, c'est de...
Well, the shared point of view here is that we take into account the different starting points in the different countries. We have to develop a feeling of fairness and solidarity. The main instrument is the agreement concluded regarding the next budget and the recovery fund. And climate ambition is one of the very significant pillars here. And of course, we have said that we would come back to a European Council to continue our discussion on the implementation of these measures, drawing on proposals which the Commission will be tabling in the various areas, so that we can ensure that these very ambitious targets, a 55% reduction by 2030, will mean that we have useful instruments in order to achieve these objectives. We want to make sure that the means we have can be used as wisely as possible in order to achieve these objectives. And then Ursula said something very important. We have also given a clear signal for 2050. And the fact that we have these commitments for 2030 means that we are giving a message to the EU, to businesses, big and small, that we want to stimulate competitiveness, and we all have to work together in order to achieve this objective.
Last question from Markus Becker from Der Spiegel. Markus, you're last.
Yeah, good Tag.
Yes, good morning. Chancellor, I have a question for you. It's about the rule of law mechanism. It has turned out that Plan B has been invoked. This is obviously what Poland and Hungary were aiming for. Would you say that this should have all happened earlier in the process at the beginning of the year? And secondly, what lessons have you drawn from this personally, from this success? And what lessons are there for the EU to learn for the future? Well, the idea that if you can't find an agreement, well, there was already this lack of agreement during the summit in July. It proved very difficult to work out common conclusions in July, and we spent a lot of hours on the conclusions on conditionality and the rule of law mechanism. That was already hard work, so it was clear that we were going to have big problems with the implementation of the legal text. So the option, the plan B, was already referred to in July. It was in the air, as it were, and as to what led to what, I don't wish to speculate on that. I would just say that it is important, as we made clear, that in connection with financial resources, it must be possible to have a rule of law mechanism to make sure that the money is spent sensibly, and that is relates to corruption and other financial irregularities, and that was also worked into the conditionality mechanism. On the other hand, thinking of the first draft of this regulation, we had to be very careful that about the wording of Article 7, and we also had to make sure that Article 7 was kept quite distinct from the secondary legislation based on it. And we incorporated that principle into the next version of the draft, and I think that was an important step.
Concludes our press conference for today. Thank you for joining us, and safe end-of-year holidays. Thank you.
Who knows what happens?